Good morning. I'm Remo, and breaking, France just announced it will recognize the Palestinian state in September, sending shockwaves through the Middle East and triggering fierce Israeli opposition. This is the Daily Signal for July 25th, 2025. Stay tuned for the rest of the stories. Here are the other top stories for July 25th, 2025. Thailand and Cambodia exchange heavy artillery fire for a second day as border fighting escalates between the Southeast Asian neighbors. Devastating images reveal mass starvation gripping Gaza as the humanitarian crisis reaches breaking point. The United States abruptly cuts short Gaza ceasefire talks, accusing Hamas of negotiating in bad faith. 48 people killed in Russian passenger plane crash as aviation authorities launch investigation. European diplomats prepare to test Iran's willingness to compromise on nuclear program as fresh sanctions loom. Taiwan holds crucial recall vote, targeting lawmakers accused of being pro-China as political tensions soar. World's smallest snake rediscovered in Barbados after vanishing for 20 years, giving conservationists hope. Ukraine's President Zelensky reverses controversial anti-corruption power grab after massive public outcry. Heartbreaking stories emerge of Gaza civilians killed while trying to get humanitarian aid for their families. Now let's dive into each story. France to recognize Palestinian state. This is unprecedented. French President Emmanuel Macron just made France the most powerful European nation to recognize Palestinian statehood. The announcement will become official at the UN General Assembly in September. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is furious, accusing France of rewarding terrorism. His far-right coalition partners are now calling for immediate West Bank annexation in direct response. Here's why this matters. This move completely shifts European diplomatic dynamics in the Middle East. It puts massive pressure on other EU nations and could derail US-mediated peace efforts. Remember this detail. France's recognition happens just as Gaza ceasefire talks collapse. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, Thailand-Cambodia border fighting, heavy artillery fire continues between Thailand and Cambodia for the second straight day. This is the most serious border clash between these ASEAN members in years. The fighting threatens regional stability in Southeast Asia and could complicate ASEAN unity. Both nations have military forces actively engaged along disputed border areas. Why this matters to you? Southeast Asian border conflicts affect global trade routes and can trigger refugee crises. This escalation comes at the worst possible time for regional economic cooperation. Speaking of humanitarian crises, starvation in Gaza. The images are devastating. Mass starvation is gripping Gaza as humanitarian organizations confirm what they're calling a mass starvation crisis. Families are literally starving to death. The blockade and ongoing violence have created food shortages so severe that aid groups are sounding emergency alarms. Children are the most vulnerable victims. Here's the critical detail. This starvation crisis is happening simultaneously with the collapse of ceasefire negotiations. The timing couldn't be worse for Gaza's 2.3 million residents. This connects directly to our next story. U.S. cuts Gaza ceasefire talks. The United States just walked away from Gaza ceasefire negotiations in Doha, accusing Hamas of lacking good faith in the talks. After 2 weeks of intensive negotiations, the U.S. State Department pulled out abruptly. Hamas had submitted a response to the U.S.-brokered ceasefire proposal, which Israel was reviewing, but American officials decided Hamas wasn't serious about peace. The real story is this. With no ceasefire in sight, the humanitarian disaster in Gaza will only worsen. This breakdown signals that violence could escalate significantly in the coming days. 48 people are dead after a Russian passenger aircraft crashed. Russian aviation authorities have launched a full investigation into the cause. This tragedy raises immediate questions about Russian aviation safety standards and could impact international flight routes involving Russian aircraft. You'll want to remember this number. This is the deadliest Russian aviation incident this year, and it comes as Russia faces increasing international isolation over its foreign policy actions. European diplomats are preparing to test whether Iran wants to make nuclear compromises before fresh sanctions hit. This is a critical moment for preventing nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. The timing is crucial. Iran faces increasing international pressure while dealing with domestic unrest and economic challenges. Here's what they're not telling you. If these talks fail, we could see the most severe sanctions on Iran ever imposed, which would spike global oil prices and destabilize the entire region. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Taiwan's pro-China recall vote. Taiwan is holding a massive recall vote targeting lawmakers accused of being pro-China. This political showdown reflects growing tensions between Taiwan and mainland China. The vote is seen as a test of Taiwan's democratic resilience against Chinese influence operations. Results could reshape Taiwan's political landscape before crucial elections. Why this matters globally. Taiwan's political direction directly affects U.S.-China relations and regional security. Any shift toward Beijing could alter the entire Pacific balance of power. In environmental news that will surprise you, world's smallest snake rediscovered. After 20 years missing, the world's smallest snake has been rediscovered in Barbados. Conservationists thought this tiny species was extinct. The rediscovery provides hope for biodiversity conservation efforts across the Caribbean and demonstrates that proper habitat protection can save endangered species. This detail will surprise you. The snake is so small, it can fit through the hole in a standard pencil. Its survival shows that even the tiniest creatures can beat extinction odds with proper conservation. Back to political developments. Zelensky's corruption U-turn. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just reversed a controversial power grab involving anti-corruption agencies after massive public backlash. The U-turn shows Ukraine's civil society remains strong despite wartime pressures. Public criticism forced Zelensky to abandon plans that would have expanded certain anti-corruption agencies' powers. Critics argued the move threatened democratic oversight. The key detail: this reversal is crucial for Ukraine's EU integration prospects and maintaining international aid credibility. Remember, Western support depends on Ukraine's commitment to fighting corruption. Our final story brings us back to Gaza. Killed while seeking aid in Gaza. Heartbreaking personal stories are emerging of Gaza civilians killed while trying to get humanitarian aid for their families. He went to get aid and didn't come back. These are the exact words families are using to describe their losses. These deaths highlight how dangerous it has become just to access basic humanitarian assistance. Aid distribution points have become targets, making survival itself a deadly risk. Here's what connects all these stories. The humanitarian access crisis in Gaza represents a complete breakdown of international humanitarian law protections. Safe passage for aid seekers should be guaranteed, but it's not happening. Let me connect these stories for you because three major patterns emerge from today's news. First, diplomatic breakdowns are accelerating. France recognizing Palestine, U.S. walking away from Gaza talks, and Thailand-Cambodia fighting all show traditional diplomacy failing. When talking stops, violence starts. Second, humanitarian crises are being weaponized. Gaza starvation, civilians killed seeking aid, and blocked humanitarian access reveal how human suffering becomes a political tool. This violates every international humanitarian principle we've established since World War II. Third, domestic politics are driving international tensions. Zelensky's corruption U-turn, Taiwan's recall vote, and Israeli response to French recognition all show how internal political pressures shape global events. Here's what this means for you. We're witnessing a breakdown of the post-World War II international order. Traditional diplomatic channels are failing, humanitarian protections are collapsing, and domestic politics increasingly drive foreign policy. The Iran nuclear talks and Taiwan's political direction will determine whether these trends accelerate or reverse. Watch those stories closely. They're the canaries in the coal mine for global stability. That's the Daily Signal for July 25th, 2025. I'm Remo. These stories affect your world, your economy, and your future. Share this briefing with someone who needs to stay informed, and we'll see you tomorrow with breaking developments on all these stories. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe.